Let's just say, the agents had warned me, some of that equipment wasn't exactly civilian-friendly. Then came the day. The one from my cold open. It was early spring, the air still sharp but the snow melted enough to make the dirt roads muddy. I'd decided to come up midweek, something I never did, because one of the agents had left a note that they needed me to grab a certain package from the storage cabinet. I rounded the bend in the road, windshield wipers clicking against the drizzle, and froze. There, in my driveway, was a big white moving truck. The back door was open, ramps down, movers carrying furniture inside my cabin, and there he was, some 20-something guy in basketball shorts and a hoodie, standing with his hands on his hips, pointing where he wanted things. Patricia's son. I slammed the truck into park so fast it jolted forward, grabbed my rain jacket, and stormed up the muddy drive. What the hell is going on here? I yelled over the sound of the rain and the clatter of the ramp. The guy looked at me like I was the one trespassing. Moving in? Mom said you'd already signed over the place. I could feel my pulse in my ears. Yo mom lit. This is my cabin, and you need to get out. Now. He shrugged like it wasn't his problem, turned, and yelled to one of the movers, bedrooms upstairs, that corner's fine. That's when I saw Patricia herself, standing on the porch under her umbrella, smiling like she'd just hosted a charity gala. Oh, don't be dramatic, she called out. We've already changed the HOA records. This will go much smoother if you just hand over your keys. That was the moment. The moment I knew this wasn't just HOA pettiness anymore. She had officially stepped into federal territory, and if she thought I was going to be her problem, she was about to find out the FBI handles things very, very differently. I didn't even argue with Patricia on the porch. I didn't scream, I didn't threaten, I just stared at her for a second, long enough to see that smug little smile she wore when she thought she'd won, and then I walked right past her, into the cabin. I wasn't going in there to fight her son. I was going in there to make a phone call. The inside was chaos, boxes everywhere, movers tromping up and down the stairs in muddy boots. One guy had set a heavy oak dresser right in front of the cabinet where the FBI kept their secured equipment. If he slid it another 6 inches, he'd bump the pressure sensor. I squeezed into the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and hit a number I wasn't supposed to have saved, but of course I did. The one the agent had given me when I first took over. Maintaining the place. It rang once. You at the property? A deep voice said. No hello, no name. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice low. We've got a situation. Unauthorized entry. People moving furniture in. They say the HOA reassigned the place. There was a pause. Then, stay where you are. Do not confront them further. We're 15 minutes out. I hung up, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from this weird mix of adrenaline and relief. Because now? This wasn't my problem anymore. It was theirs. I went back to the porch. Patricia was still there, umbrella perfectly positioned, clearly enjoying the sight of movers carrying a leather couch through my front door. Patricia, I said evenly, I need you and your son to step away from the house. Now. She laughed. You don't get to give orders here. The HOA board has already approved the reassignment. And frankly, I'm tired of your attitude. I wanted to tell her that in about 10 minutes, she was going to have a whole new appreciation for my attitude. But instead, I just leaned against the porch railing, watching the driveway. The rain kept falling, tapping against her umbrella in this rhythmic way that almost made me smile. Because I could already imagine the look on her face when the black SUV showed up, and right on cue. I heard it, that low hum of an engine, steady, powerful. 2 dark vehicles rounded the bend in the road, tires spitting gravel and mud. They pulled in behind my truck, blocking the driveway completely. The movers froze. Patricia's son actually stepped back onto the porch, his hoodie dripping with rain. The driver's side doors opened, and 2 men in plain clothes got out, dark jackets, no-nonsense expressions. You could smell the authority before they even said a word. Ma'am, sir, step away from the residence, one of them said, his voice clipped and official. The other agent moved past him, heading straight into the cabin. Patricia's smile faltered. But she tried to play it off. "This is a misunderstanding. I'm the HOA president, ma'am," the agent cut her off. "You are trespassing on a federal property. You and everyone here need to leave immediately." Her face went pale. "Federal? What do you mean, federal?" "This is private, not anymore," the agent said flatly. "This residence is under the jurisdiction of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You have been unlawfully entering and altering a secured location." You could see her brain trying to compute that sentence, like a loading bar stuck at 99%. Her son just looked between her and the agents, clearly realizing that Mom's plan was about 3 steps dumber than she'd made it sound. One of the movers muttered, "We're out," and started hauling his guys toward the truck. Can't blame him. Movers get paid by the hour, not to get questioned by federal agents. The lead agent turned to me. "You can stay. We'll need your statement later. For now, we're securing the site." And then came my favorite part. The agent reached into his jacket, pulled out a small black folder, and opened it just enough for Patricia to see the badge and ID inside. He didn't need to say anything. That little flash of gold and plastic said it all. She stumbled over her words. I didn't know." "You didn't need to know," the agent interrupted. "You just needed to stay off private property that doesn't belong to you." They escorted her and her son down the muddy driveway like unwelcome guests being shown the door at a fancy hotel. Her umbrella wobbled in her hand, and I swear, for the first time since I'd met her, she didn't look in control. She looked small. As the SUVs idled and the agents finished clearing the place, I leaned against my porch post and just let it sink in. Patricia had tried to take my cabin. But she hadn't known whose cabin it really was, and now? She was about to learn the hard way what happens when you mess with the FBI. The agents stayed for hours after Patricia and her son were sent packing. 2 of them were inside, doing whatever it is FBI agents do when they secure a location. One stayed outside with me, taking down my statement, asking for exact dates and times Patricia had approached me about reassigning the property. I told him everything, the so-called bylaw, the unhooked gate chain, the flipped door mat, the missing propane tank. He wrote it all down, his pen moving fast but precise, like every detail mattered, and the whole time, in the back of my mind, I kept picturing Patricia pacing around her kitchen, probably trying to figure out how she'd gone from HOA Queen Bee to federal trespass suspect. And one rainy afternoon, before they left, one of the agents handed me a business card. "If she, or anyone else from the HOA, approaches you about this property again, call us first. Don't engage." There was a weight to the way he said it. Like, this wasn't over yet, and it wasn't, because about a week later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was an HOA board member, not Patricia. The guy sounded like he'd just been woken up from a bad dream. "We, had an emergency meeting last night. Patricia's been removed as president." I let that sit for a second before I said anything. "Really? And why's that?" "Well," he stammered, "there's, apparently, some investigation into, fraudulent documentation? Something about altering HOA records without board approval." I almost laughed out loud. "Fraudulent documentation?" "Yeah, that would be the reassignment paperwork." She'd waved around like it was gospel. Turns out, she'd actually gone into the HOA's internal files and replaced my cabin's ownership listing with her son's name, backdated the approval, and added a fake signature from another board member. The problem? That board member was in Arizona at the time, with plane tickets to prove it. So not only had she forged HOA records, she'd forged them in a way that directly interfered with federal property. By week 2, word had spread through the neighborhood. You know how small communities are. If someone's dog poops on the wrong lawn, it's a 48-hour gossip cycle. So when the FBI shows up at a cabin and escorts the HOA president out in the rain, that's front page news for months. Neighbors I'd never spoken to before started waving at me from their porches. Some even stopped me at the Little General store in town to whisper, "Is it true? Did they really take her in for questioning?" I didn't confirm anything, but I also didn't deny it. Let them wonder. Then, one evening, I got a text from that same board member. You'll be pleased to know, Patricia's been permanently banned from the HOA board. Also, we're updating our bylaws to make sure nothing like this happens again. Translation: they were terrified of me calling the feds a second time, and honestly, I liked that just fine. What made it even sweeter was the little detail the agent had slipped to me before leaving that first day. If we determined there was willful interference with our operations, she could be facing charges. We'll be in touch if that happens. Which meant Patricia's I didn't know defense might not save her after all. By the time summer rolled around, her house had a for sale sign out front. Rumor was, she was moving in with her sister in another state, for a fresh start. But everyone knew the truth. She couldn't show her face at the lake anymore without people whispering FBI under their breath. And me? I got my peace back. The cabin was quiet again, the porch free of violation notices, the only visitors being the occasional agent coming by for maintenance. But the best part wasn't the peace. It was knowing she'd done this to herself. And she'd done it big. About 2 months after the whole moving truck fiasco, I was back at the cabin on a quiet Saturday morning. The lake was glass still, the smell of pine and damp earth drifting through the open windows. I had my coffee in one hand and was halfway through a crossword puzzle when my phone buzzed. The caller ID just said blocked. Which, for me, usually meant one thing. This is Special Agent Carter. Am I speaking with the property caretaker? Yep. FBI. You are, I said, setting down the mug. Just wanted to give you a courtesy update. We've concluded our investigation regarding the unauthorized entry. Your HOA president, former president, has signed a formal agreement to stay off the premises indefinitely. She's also entered into a plea arrangement for the falsification of records. That's all I can disclose, but I thought you'd want to know. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the sunlight catching on the water. I appreciate that, Agent Carter. And for what it's worth, he added, you handled yourself well that day. Most people don't keep their cool like that. After we hung up, I sat there for a minute, letting it all settle. Patricia had gone from queen of the HOA to someone with a federal agreement keeping her away from my property. Her son? From what I'd heard, he moved to a small apartment in the city, and avoided telling people the lake house story. The HOA itself had changed too. New president, new bylaws, and a very sudden enthusiasm for respecting homeowner rights. It was funny. All that time she'd been trying to push me out, telling me the place was underused and perfect for her son. But the moment she lost power, the whole community seemed to breathe easier. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just about a cabin. It was about boundaries. Because people like Patricia? They don't respect boundaries you ask them to respect. They only respect boundaries they can't cross without consequences, and in this case, the consequences had 3 bold letters, FBI. The last time I saw her was purely by accident, a month or so after that final call from Agent Carter. I was driving through town and spotted her outside the post office. She caught my eye for just a second, then quickly looked away and busied herself with her purse.no wave. No fake smile. Just, gone, and that was all the closure I needed. If there's one thing this taught me, it's that bullies, no matter how grown up or respectable they look, always think they can get away with pushing someone around. And they usually can, until they push the wrong person. Patricia thought I was just some weekend cabin owner she could manipulate. She didn't realize I had the quietest, most powerful backup team imaginable. So yeah, sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply letting the right people do their job anyway. That's the saga of the time my HOA president tried to give my cabin to her son, and ended up getting schooled by the FBI. If you enjoyed this story, do me a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment if you've ever dealt with a power-tripping HOA, and don't forget to subscribe for more wild stories just like this one. Because trust me, I've got plenty more where this came from. I swear, my blood went cold the second I saw that moving truck in my driveway. Not parked in front of it. Not across the street. In my driveway, and there he was, some 20-something guy in basketball shorts, directing movers into my cabin. Like he owned the place. Only, he didn't own it. It was my cabin. Or, actually, it wasn't even really mine. It belonged to the FBI, and let's just say, when an HOA Karen decides she's gonna play real estate queen and a gift your cabin to her precious son, without knowing who really owns it? You don't just get mad, you let the feds handle it, and watching what happened next was better than any revenge plan I could have come up with. Hey guys, before I spill all the insane details, and trust me, this one gets wild, if you like crazy HOA stories, revenge tales, or just that sweet justice feeling when karma hits, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps out the channel. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss the next jaw dropper I've got lined up. So here's some backstory, because I promise, none of this would have happened if it weren't for my stubborn streak, and her, the president of our HOA. Let's call her Patricia. But honestly, Karen fits her energy like it was tailor-made. The cabin in question wasn't some dusty, falling apart hunting shack. No, this was a gorgeous cedar A-frame tucked at the edge of a national forest, sharp roofline, big wraparound porch, a view of the lake that could calm even the most fried nerves. On summer evenings, the golden light would filter through the pines, painting the whole place in this honey-colored glow. In winter, the snow made it look like a Christmas card you'd see in a travel brochure. It wasn't just property. It was peace. I'd inherited it from my uncle, who had one of those jobs where you never really knew what he did. He just called himself a government contractor. In reality, my uncle had been in law enforcement, specifically in a division that worked closely with federal agencies. When he passed, the cabin didn't just transfer to me in the normal way. It was technically co-owned by the FBI as part of some ongoing operational arrangement. Now before you picture some kind of Hollywood spy movie with black SUVs and earpieces everywhere, it wasn't like that. The FBI didn't live there. But they used it. Some weekends, plainclothes agents would vacation there, which really meant they were observing someone in the area, or monitoring certain activity. There was equipment hidden in places you wouldn't think to look. Part of my role was to keep the cabin looking lived in and normal. Maintain it. Make it blend. Don't ask questions. It was a good deal. I got free use of the place when it wasn't in operation mode, and the feds quietly covered most of the big maintenance costs. But there was one variable my uncle never warned me about: the HOA. From the very first weekend I stayed there, Patricia, the HOA president, made it her personal mission to educate me on the community rules. The first time she marched up the porch steps, clipboard in hand, she didn't even introduce herself. She just tapped on one of the cedar beams with her pen and said, "These should have been power washed last season. That's a violation, you know." Then it became constant: "Your firewood stack is visible from the road. That's a violation. The color of your curtains doesn't match the community guidelines. You left your kayak leaning against the porch railing, unsightly." Every weekend I came up, there'd be a new courtesy notice taped to my door. At first, I tried to be polite, fix little things, smile, wave. But it was like feeding a stray cat. The more I gave in, the more she followed me around, demanding more. By month 3, she wasn't even pretending to enforce the actual rules anymore. She just made them up. One time she said the wind chimes I'd hung could disturb the wildlife. Another time she told me my porch chairs were not in harmony with the neighborhood aesthetic. This wasn't about the HOA. This was about control, and Patricia? She loved control. Now here's where it gets tricky, because while the cabin looked like a normal home, there were things inside that could never be tampered with. Things the FBI made very clear were hands off for anyone but me or their agents. So when Patricia started making comments about how underused my cabin was, how a family could really enjoy this place full time, my stomach tightened. I'd seen how petty she could be over wind chimes. What would she do if she decided she was entitled to the whole property? I didn't know it then, but that thought wasn't paranoia. It was a warning, because a few months later, Patricia would cross a line so hard, she wouldn't just tangle with me. She'd tangle with federal law enforcement, and spoiler alert, the feds don't play games with people who mess with their stuff. Patricia's little comments about underused property started cropping up more often. At first, it was casual. Or at least, pretending to be casual. You know, I see you're only up here maybe 2 weekends a month. A shame, really. This would make such a wonderful home for a young family. I'd just give her a tight smile, the kind you give someone when you really don't want to talk but you also don't want to hand them ammo. But she didn't stop. Next it was, we have families on our waiting list who would love to live in this community. Have you considered renting it out? Or even selling? You'd be doing such a service. By service, she meant, give me what I want so I can feel powerful. It became clear this wasn't small talk, this was a campaign. And then, she got specific. One chilly November afternoon, I was unloading groceries from my truck when Patricia came striding up in her puffy jacket, big sunglasses, and that permanent pursed lip expression that made her look like she'd just smelled sour milk. My son is moving back from California, she announced, no greeting, no preamble. He's starting over. Needs a place to settle in. This cabin would be perfect for him. I almost dropped the bag of oranges in my hands. Perfect, for him? Did she just offer my cabin to her son like it was hers to give? I blinked, trying to keep my voice even. Patricia, this isn't for sale. It's not even, but she cut me off, smiling like she'd already decided for both of us. Oh, I'm not talking about buying. I mean, you could transfer the usage rights. You're hardly here, and the HOA has the authority to reassign underutilized properties. It's in the bylaws. That was a lie. I knew it. There was nothing in the HOA rules about reassigning property. But Patricia said it with the confidence of someone who'd never been challenged before. I tried to laugh it off, but inside, I was uneasy. Because here's the thing, in normal circumstances, she couldn't touch my cabin. But she didn't know the real circumstances. She didn't know that the cabin wasn't just mine, that the FBI had a stake in it. She didn't know that usage rights were basically a legal minefield because of the federal connection, and she definitely didn't know that a stunt like this could blow back on her in ways she couldn't even imagine. Over the next few weeks, little things started happening that made my skin crawl. I'd come up on a Friday night and find the gate chain unhooked. My spare propane tank was gone from the shed. Once, the door mat was flipped upside down, something only someone who'd stepped inside would notice, because the mat had rubber on the bottom and coir on top. Was she snooping? Sending people to inspect the place? The paranoia wasn't fun. I found myself double-checking locks, running my hand over the edges of the door frame for signs of tampering. And every time I thought, if she messes with the wrong thing in here,